There is an age-old adage, the contractor's house is never finished. Now why is that? Why would the one person with all the tools, all the resources and knowledge have the incomplete home? Now being raised in a house continually under deconstruction and reconstruction, it was never finished because the vision for what could be and the evolving needs of the family would change the final design. So when we would finish off one room, at times my dad would get this idea and say, if we only actually tore out that wall, then we could expand this to have more people in the living room for a house party. So the design was always in flux based on the future hope of what could be. Now the World War II farmhouse had to be adapted to the vision and the needs of the modern family. The easiest way would have been to burn the whole thing down, go from the foundation up. So whatever mistakes we had, whatever part of reconstruction would be our fault, our mistakes, not inherited from past traditions, not inherited from the previous family's needs. And we would wonder, why did they do this? And then as we tore out the walls in the living room to expand it to include more people around our parties, we found multiple bottles of whiskey that they covered up because they would drink it, place it on the wall as they're building, they'd build over it. And suddenly the mystery of how they built the way they built was solved. Now, the easy way, like I said, would be to burn it down. But we didn't have that option because we needed to live in the house we were reconstructing. And the places being focused on were driven by the needs of the family, which means the house stayed in multiple stages of deconstruction of reconstruction. The house stayed in multiple stages of disrepair. We would have a finished living room, but the master suite we were building off the back took years to accomplish. We were able to retrofit the kitchen, but the bathroom was an 8-year project because we always needed it to be finished and usable since we only had one. So we'd have to get it to good enough and then put things back in place so someone could shower for work the next day. Now, in the middle of this, my dad would ask one of the most frightening questions. During the reconstruction process, he would walk up to me, tearing down a wall at 15, new to construction, say, "So what are you doing?" And I'd start laying out the details of the way I saw the job. I say, "Are you sure?" Until that moment, I was positive. But as soon as he said, "Are you sure?" doubts flew through my mind. It opened my eyes to new ways of seeing, to different problem points, saying, oh, did I make sure to put the brakes at the corner because we took out a load-bearing wall? Suddenly, every catastrophe, every shortcoming came to mind. But he'd ask me this so that I'd think through my plan to look at it with fresh eyes. He would ask me this as a teaching model because he didn't do it just when I made mistakes. He would do it periodically so that I would call to mind what stage of the process we were in. Doubt was able to give me a gift of new light on the same project. It helped me ask better questions. Rather than assume I already had all the answers, I already knew all of the knowledge, it made me take a step back. Our faith is the same. It would be easiest to burn everything down to the foundation and build from scratch. Then all the mistakes would be our own. We wouldn't inherit boundary markers hiding the whiskey bottles strapped in the walls. But the easiest is not an option for us. We inherited a home built by the previous generations. Without them, we would be lost. However, this means we must live in the house as we deconstruct and reconstruct our inherited faith, to adapt the home for the needs of a new family. We cannot know exactly what this will look like, since the family is growing, and growth casts doubt on the old structure's ability to meet the new needs. Depending on where you're at in your process, the rooms may be in multiple stages of deconstruction or reconstruction. The stages have been outlined by Brian McLaren, who was drawing from the work of Richard Rohr and a dozen psychologists, so that we could see at what point of our faith journey do we see the necessary tools for reconstruction. The stages that were outlined were simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony or new simplicity. So simplicity holds strong answers with black and white rules, and the blessing of this stage is certainty. When we first learn something, we're taught the absolutes in order to be able to keep it simple and actionable. Doubt comes in when we see that our answers come up short of all the people we've met in life, when we see that our answers cannot satisfy the questions that are coming. The answers are not universal, they cannot answer every question, and so the doubt creates a doorway to step into complexity, where complexity gives us the blessing of expanding the intellectual resources we have to draw out of. This stage gathers expert opinions in order to create efficacy, to get the job done in the most efficient way possible. But doubt enters this stage too. When you realize that your system has holes in it, it does not include the whole people. In order to progress part, you had to let go of the periphery. In order to advance the center, you had to step on the margins. You cannot account for all the experts that also disagree, which means you have an efficient system. You get to A plus B equals C, but it becomes too clean, and that means it becomes less human. Which brings us into the perplexity where we get mixed up again. And the gift of perplexity is embracing mystery. Where you can say, I cannot know everything, but I know what I've experienced. Simple answers no longer satisfy. The efficient system leaves too many people outside. And now you see there's multiple paths. But yet, doubting comes in when you try to move beyond deconstruction, beyond the endless movement back to the original causes. Say, how do we step forward from here? How do we start building? And that's when you have to say, what does it look like to name a way forward? Passing through stage 3's perplexity, we arrive at harmony or new simplicity. And the gift of new simplicity is a freedom to begin building again. The first stage of simplicity is a touch naive. It believes it sees the whole picture. Yet new simplicity realizes it doesn't see everything, but it's working towards seeing everyone. The community at stage 4, or harmony, is building, and it's a building that revolves around faith working through love. And that love is measured by the effect on the other person. So that when I say I'm loving, I can only say I'm loving if you respond back to me as like, yes, I experienced what you've done as love. Without that, without the echo back towards us, it becomes single direction, coercive, and it doesn't actually draw us towards the other person. This stage realizes that the only truly sacred thing in this life is the person in front of you. Now, let's quickly look at a place to where these stages play out for the disciples, who are beginning with a naive simplicity. The narrative in Luke 9 has shifted. No longer are we just going through the traveling narrative of teaching. It now says that Jesus has turned and put his face towards Jerusalem, which means everything building up, everything that's about to happen. The story arc is coming to the climax of final judgment. And in the minds of the disciples, they know at this climax of final judgment, the good guys will win. The bad will be violently overthrown. And all of them, the disciples, know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they, the good ones, will be given power over others. There is only one thing left to name. Now, since obviously we as the disciples get power over, how does the power ranking go with us? Because within simplicity, we have absolute strict binaries and complete hierarchies. And so it says in 946, now an argument started among them as to which of them might be the greatest, or said another way, who will have the highest position in the court of Jesus when he sacks Jerusalem. Jesus, knowing what they were thinking, asks, are you sure? And the question of are you sure causes doubt. And it expands their search, and they double down on stage 1 simplicity. As we see in 949, where it says, John answers Jesus, Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to prevent them because they do not follow along with us. Hearing Jesus' first critique of them trying to create hierarchies among themselves, they expand the look to go outside. Say, okay, well, maybe we can't have hierarchy, but I can be over them. Because simplicity, naive simplicity, demands subordination, not co-creation. Jesus prevented them from creating internal hierarchies, so they went to the external ones. And again, Jesus asks, are you sure you know what you're doing? And in verse 50 says, because these people you're trying to stop, the one who is not against you, the one who is not actively trying to stop you, is for you. With this, they enter into a stage of complexity. If we can't keep it simple, if I cannot have power over you, then surely I can look to other people within our tradition that can show me what path to take into the new kingdom. I'll still be a follower of Jesus, but it'll be Jesus plus. It'll be Jesus plus some of the stories we've heard of coercive of power. So as they come into a Samaritan city, they send word to the Samaritan city to come meet Jesus at the gate, because that's the way you pay honor to someone. They say, go around, we don't want you, because you're heading towards Jerusalem. And at this moment, the disciples saying, oh, here's one who's actively against us, so this is the point we can assert power over. James and John saw and said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them like Elijah? See, in complexity, you're looking for the most efficient path to your goal. They want the kingdom, and they know that this kingdom requires them to purge the land and get rid of enemies. The most effective way forward, then, would be going with some of the other heroes of their sacred writings, like Elijah, who purged the land by calling fire, destroying the people in front of them. And this time, Jesus doesn't just say, are you sure? He goes into a full-scale rebuke. In 55 to 66 says, you do not know what kind of spirit you are a part of. For the Son of Man did not come to harm human life, but to rescue it. Which means that the most efficient way may not be the best way. In short, Jesus asked, are you sure every time they tried to contain the way of Jesus in previous stages? Like the verse immediately preceding this section, it says the disciples didn't understand, so they would double down on simplicity. And doubling down on simplicity meant doubling the boundary walls and shrinking our group to the purest form. Even when jumping into complexity, they found another way to try to get to their ultimate end goal, which is a purified and exonerated, elevated us over you. And yet, with this, Jesus points them to a way beyond, putting them into perplexity, where they did not understand. And they had to just say, I will walk with Jesus. Embracing the mystery that I may not know how this will work out, but I can know the one I'm walking with. Now, harmony, the fourth stage, or new simplicity, is realized as they walk. But they are entered into perplexity in 955 with Jesus. And it takes 22 years for them to get to new simplicity in Acts 15, where you see the Jerusalem Council, where they stop trying to double down in naive simplicity. They no longer look for the efficient path towards the ultimate goal of complexity. And they're starting to name a way forward, so they're moving out of perplexity, where we can only say we can exist in awe and wonder, and that each person has an individual experience, and start saying, how do we unite the cause going forward? And it is here that they stopped shrinking boundaries and recognized God through the inclusion of the other. As it says in 15, it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to let go of the divinely appointed Torah laws in order to fully embrace the people in front of us. Which means new harmony ultimately looks like faith working through love by centering the object of our love of other people. And to center them, it has had to let go of faith working through simple, perfect binaries. Had to let go of faith working through systems of efficiency to say that we can get our ultimate goal easily. And it even had to let go of perplexity, to where it said every person has their own experience and all we can do is sit in awe. To say in this moment, at this time, for them, in 50 CE, in the city of Jerusalem, that they look together and say, we recognize God through the inclusion of the other people. And this is where they started to let go of things to embrace people and produce an era of harmony. Now, if you're a student of church history, you'll see these stages are not static. You move through them. Brian McLaren says it's like rings of a tree. Each ring coming after the next, it only stops when it dies. So, the new simplicity given time, moves into just simplicity, and we realize points in our lives to where we need to expand and go through process, the deconstruction and the reconstruction, to adapt to the needs of the new family. And as you look through church history, you'll see that it's always moving towards faith working through love, and it repeats these cycles as we try to delimit and pull back. And we start to understand that it'll be in multiple places and multiple moments of deconstruction and reconstruction that we walk along with the disciples, unsure of where we're going, but moving towards the harmony of Acts 15. This is why at FOS, we do not ask you to embrace final answers. Rather, we ask you to enter into a dialogue. We invite you into this dialogue so that together we can learn how to ask better questions and join each other in the multiple stages of journeying in the different parts of processing. Because the movement towards harmony and the expansion of the community seem good to us and the Holy Spirit.